Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're able to join us today for our third webinar in our Upping Your Game series. I'm Jennifer Tersini, founder and principal of Raise the Bar Consulting. As you know, or many of you know, we offer comprehensive fundraising, organizational development, and transitional leadership solutions. Today's session is architecting a flexible work reality for your organization. We are delighted to have Christy Street with us. She is the owner of Next Trio, smart IT for businesses. And of course, that means nonprofits too. I'm just going to pass the baton real quickly over to Cynthia Wasco to share a few housekeeping items with you, and then we will go ahead and introduce you to Christy.
Thank you, Jennifer. Just so that everyone knows, this is in webinar mode, so you do not have access to unmute yourself. However, about 10 minutes, we allocate about 10 minutes or so for questions at the end. So if you would like to ask a question, you can raise your hand with the raise your hand feature that you'll find at the bottom of your screen if you just scroll your mouse real quick. You can raise your hand and I can unmute you to ask that question. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll also see a chat feature and also a Q&A feature. So if you have a question throughout the presentation and you don't want to forget it, I'd encourage you to throw that question into the Q&A so that it doesn't get lost if people are chatting amongst themselves within the chat feature. And I think that is it. This session is being recorded and will be available later as well on YouTube. And with that, I'd like to introduce Christy Street. Christy?
Thank you guys so much. I'm glad everybody's here. This is a really timely topic, I think. Certainly, my organization is a lot like a lot of other businesses and organizations in that we're deciding how much of the forced situation from the prior year to 15 months we want to retain. What are parts of the I guess learning curve that we think are positive changes in our business, and really making that into a recruiting and retention benefit for workforce, for staff, and making it a competitive advantage for the people that we serve. So I'm glad to talk about this today, and I want to thank Jennifer and Cynthia for having me. As I mentioned, my name is Christy Street. I'm the managing partner of an IT services firm. So Nextrio's job is to provide small and medium-sized organizations with IT consulting help. Now, I'm a little bit different than a lot of IT or technical people. I think of technology as the means to make humans better, not necessarily humans requiring technology to do their job. I think it's it really is a symbiotic relationship, and it's not about the technology. It's almost never about technology. And so my bias going into this, and the thing that I want to disclaim going in, is that if you have a broken people process, applying technology is not going to help. But if you have a process you want to make smarter, faster, better, if you want it to be facilitated across a work from anywhere, not just remote work, but a work from anywhere workforce. And by the way, that also means a buy your services, deliver your mission to anywhere as well, then technology might actually be that robotic assist that helps you get there. So going into today's conversation, please realize that I'm not here pushing tools or pushing technology. I'm here to explain that there are some assists that can help you do your business and your mission better. So I look forward, by the way, to your questions as we get going here at the end. So I'm going to do some definitions first. What does it mean to be flexible? So this is actually something I think that can be defined both for you and your employees as you really put some ground rules around expectations. And so we'll go a little bit into those definitions, and making sure that we are being as clear as possible for all parties. I will spend a little time talking about not only some tools, but how to use them. What are the tips and techniques, the tricks we've learned along the way that really creates a great employee experience, that really sort of supports that flexibility that both parties are looking for. And then I'll give you some what's coming next. Keep your eye on the horizon. This is a absolutely evolving space, and change will be coming quickly, and that would include maybe some terms that don't exist today, but will exist in the next 12 to 18 months. So after that, we'll take all your questions. The definitions of remote and flexible workforce, I think, are really from, as I said, shifting gears out of the we did what we could to make it work, to sort of the light at the end of the tunnel. Now we are at the new normal. And for some of us, we haven't realized this is it. This is where we made it through the dark tunnel. Now we're on to the light. Let's start going forward with a positive and permanent solution. That's where we're at, folks. And for most businesses, we are still transitioning. And not to say that the struggle still isn't real and that we still are not dealing with outside factors, but this is the time to stop saying, I'm going to wait, I'm going to see. This is the time to say, this is an expectation of our workforce. It's an expectation of our clients and stakeholders. So flexible is here to stay. Now, not every organization is going to adopt flexibility. Not every organization is going to have perhaps different categories of workers, but this is the time to even put that down on paper and say, we're not going to go forward and have remote workforce. We're not going to have mobile or flexible work schedules. I think it's that evaluation point that is the point now. So we're out of the resiliency stage and we're into the flexibility stage. And this is a response to what your people want. This is, I think, another important trend to realize as we come out of the pandemic and into the recovery of our economy. It's important to realize that workforce shortages, labor, talent, competition, particularly in the West and in our Arizona region, is going to be very, very tight. There will be either not enough folks, not enough trained folks, or not enough folks who want a traditional employment gig. They're going to want job sharing. They're going to want the ability to stay home with kids. And yet work. They're going to want to take care of parents. They're going to be returning workers who are on their second or third career. And so the more flexible options, the more you can invest in really what is the largest asset of your organization, and that is going to be your people. I think of flexibility as a new currency. This is almost like the cash we pay for staffing. It's a form of currency. You can trade in it. You can perhaps lure into your organization someone who might have taken a job that paid more, but by giving them the benefit of flexibility, it's actually more appealing and attractive. Or maybe you're able to keep someone who has been a longtime employee, who is needing some change in their schedule, maybe temporary, maybe permanently, by using flexible work options as an incentive to stay a little longer and stretch out that tenure. So, I mean, it's no secret that people are starting to measure their job satisfaction in the perception of flexibility. And again, I'm honing in on a couple of key words in this definition, which is, if you think of yourself as a flexible organization, but you don't actually have a definition of what that means, it's not marketing itself the way that you think it is. You're not getting the full benefits of that. So you really want to demonstrate and to codify how you are supporting organizations, how you're engaging those employees, how you are boosting through a series of either trades of time or trades of location, or even trades of the types of activities that they do every day, and how you're making their job um, not just enjoyable. It's not our jobs as leaders to make everybody have fun. We want them to make it feel valuable, a fair trade for a fair day's pay. And so a lot of times, some of the frustrations that come along with how hard it is to do things and find things and communicate with people, those end up being a sort of cultural plaque that at the end of the day, if they were able to, they would put it on their W-2 and subtract from what they got paid. So we don't want that to happen. We want to support um, the positive and good ROI of a company culture that really treats and invests in the whole system that supports and engages the workforce. I think that comes down to really 6 key categories. I could entertain arguments for a few others, but if you cover these 6, boy, I think you've got something special. So one is to really have an empowered workforce, an employee who feels like they are able to make decisions and that they know where the boundaries of their decision making are, and that they're held accountable for the things that are clearly noted and measured as their responsibility. Think of this as the old baseball analogy. Who's covering the outfield? Who's covering first base? If someone knows what their area of responsibility is, they know then they feel empowered to take action. And the deeper that empowerment, the more likely they are to classify their job as a great employee experience. Opportunities for growth. I think many folks, if you are doing an initial interview with someone and you'll say, why are you leaving your current job, or what are you looking for in your next engagement? Opportunity for growth comes up in our world probably every interview. And I would argue that a lot of engaged businesses and a lot of engaged organizations with cultural uh, sophistication and maturity, they want employees who want to grow. No one knowingly hires someone who wants to dull and decline in their skills and senses. I think that really, when combined with empowerment that personal growth, professional growth, it really lends to a sense of purpose. It really lends to knowing what their particular component in the cogs of the organization. What's my piece that makes this whole thing go forward? What's my part of the Rube Goldberg device that is every organization? That purposeful and purpose-driven employee really it turns out to be someone who believes that they're believes in what they're doing and is highly engaged. It also helps with focus. I mean, I think that one of the things that we struggled with for a long time in the business community, largely, I would say, certainly to blame, conveniently to blame, but perhaps actually to blame on technology, because it is now a multitasking world. We have distractions, we have rabbit holes, we can Google ourselves into oblivion, and so that ability to focus and to find what I need and only what I need, and not have to hunt and search and feel disorganized, really does play into a great employee experience. And then obviously connection. Wherever you are, whether you work in your office or at your dining room table, you want to feel connected to the purpose and the mission and the people of your organization. Because all of those, the other 5, they play into your mental and physical health. And I believe that if you've got some ratio, and quite frankly, over the course of your tenure with an organization, if you've been there for a long time, those percentages of value between these 6 categories, they fluctuate. That's natural, that's normal in life. You know, maybe parts of your job end up subtracting from your well-being while you're really working on a big project. But eventually getting back to that balance, eventually having a healthy ratio around all 6 of these areas leads to great employee experience, which therefore translates into a great organizational experience for anyone doing business with you, anyone who's being served by your mission. Um, they're going to know that the asset of your organization is a valuable, healthy, invested in asset. So I set those definitions in place because it's, again, not about the technology. It's about what are you trying to accomplish through the humans in your business who are responsible for delivering your services. None of us have a robotic organization, but in today's world, if we're able to tease apart the things that people should do because it's valuable and it challenges them and they feel important in their role in their life and they feel like they're making a difference. If you're able to tease those things apart and really protect them from the things that are frustrating, from the things that are busy work, from the things that they've always done because that's just the way we did it, then you will in fact have a high performing organization. You will in fact um, uh, I think position yourself and protect yourself from some of the outside forces that will cause problems like these short supply of talent and workforce pipeline. So, and P.S. any future leave the building emergencies, whether that's a small crisis like we have a termite infestation and we need to gas the place for a week, or we end up with another health crisis like we've just experienced. If you have some clear playbook definitions, then you are going to respond quickly and not be stuck in analysis paralysis. So now that I've said that it's not about the technology, we're going to talk a lot about technology, because what gives you that robotic assist? What helps you? Now, today I will tell you, we've come a long way in the last 12 to 15 months. And in fact, Microsoft is one of the largest partners for nonprofits and for businesses. And they were very surprised, I think, had no idea in the product planning for some of their technology, specifically their cloud-based technology, that the uptake of um, products like Microsoft Teams and OneDrive for Business would have exploded as quickly as they did. And I mean, I think you would hear the same thing from Zoom folks. But I know the Microsoft folks said that what they thought would take 2 years to accomplish in people getting familiar and comfortable using instant messaging chat or video calls or other collaborative services, their 2-year roadmap was condensed to a 2-month roadmap. And so, boy, they had to get busy quickly to add new features. But also how exciting for us that ripping that Band-Aid off and really just having to embrace some of these collaborative connection, team building technologies really move this market space forward. I tell you that story because I think that the exciting part is that what's coming next hasn't even really been categorized, hasn't really been marketed. And I think what you're going to see, and I will show you towards the end of the presentation, is a whole new, probably one day will be considered table stakes, but in our world today, where we sit today, an employee engagement platform, a whole new category of what you'll have to run your business will be created. Now, today we have an employee engagement platform. It's called 22 tools that we think will maybe work together, and if they don't, we'll just catch whatever falls out in the middle. I'm going to show you some of the best of those tools and my recommendations for some of the categories that really facilitate really getting these high performing teams working together. And again, this is not necessarily geared to an organization where everybody's remote it's not geared toward an organization where everybody's in the office but can't meet together in a conference room. It's not necessarily geared towards an organization that has what I think is fairly common right now, which is a third, a third, a third. A third of the people are only working from home, a third of the folks are only working from the office, and then a third of the people flex back and forth. Some may be mobile and in the field with their constituents or their clients. Some may be doing 3 days at home and 2 days in the office. There's a lot of combinations in that flex category, but that's what we are seeing locally anyway, is most organizations who are not exclusively um, uh, driven to deliver services in person. So for example, a roofer doesn't really have a lot of their services that they can provide from home. So, so some of the trades and construction type organizations are exclusively on site. Obviously, healthcare is that way, largely that way as well. But the rest of us who are delivering other kinds of services will probably fall in that third, a third, a third. And so all of the things we talk about today are in the category of probably applies in some degree to everyone. So look and see if there's a tool in here that you think will work for you, that can help you, whether the person you're working with is next door to you in the office down the hall or across town. So a couple things that I like to focus on, and this is you'll see this reflected in the tools that I recommend, is that face-to-face supervision. There is no replacement for it. If you've ever tried to manage any process or person through email, you know that it's a disaster. I will say, my little aside is, there's some tools out there developed for people who only can communicate in writing. Sometimes if we're working with teams in another country where there's a language barrier or there's a time difference, et cetera, then email is the way that we send directives back and forth. So there are things like tone check and some of the other sort of try to help you take the emotion out of email so that folks don't imply or reply from an emotional standpoint, and really just get the facts communicated. So set all that aside, wherever possible, face-to-face supervision is the objective. And so the tools I'll show you are geared towards that. I'm also really a big fan of this focus thing. I think that our brains are really having a hard time, although we are evolving, we're having a hard time with what's sometimes known as information bulimia. We are just gorging and gorging on this, and then we hit a point where we just can't absorb anymore. And it's almost as if we're shut down from that point forward. So eliminating distractions and really retraining your brain on how to focus and using a technology to assist you in that is important. I'm just going to harp on the oldie but goodie, meeting management. We'll talk a little bit about that, but I really do think that this structured check-in. So over the last year, I think that what may have suffered is that the standard one-to-one or check-in meetings that we had, they evolved into something not as ideal as they once were. Maybe you don't go to lunch with people anymore. Maybe you don't have coffee as often as you do. And sure, we'll get back to that. But in the meantime, if you have an employee that's not going to come back to the location where you are, then you need some sort of structured check-in and a way to facilitate that expectation. And with that comes clear rules of engagement. I mean, you're going to have somebody in your organization at some point in the future join you, if you haven't already had this already, join you, and you may never meet them in their whole cycle of their career. You may onboard them remotely, you may offboard them remotely, you may never shake their hand. So how do you explain culturally how we do things if there isn't a clear set of rules of engagement, particularly with the use of technology? So we'll talk a little bit about that. All right, let's jump into the tools. So number one, you must have a team messaging application. These are very common. You had these before COVID. You're going to have them for a long, long time going forward. So I mentioned to you Microsoft Teams. Again, 98% of the business community uses Microsoft Teams and Microsoft tools. So that is my favorite. I have used Slack. I like Slack as well. Here's a couple you may not have heard of, and that's Chanty and Flock. These are all designed to be a chat app on steroids, right? So you're going to have varying degrees of being able to record and capture information in a text thread that you can reference back to, that you can call in other people. Think of this as the text-based intercom of the business, of the organization. What used to, in the old days, be the overhead paging system. Hey, I need, supervisor to the front. These chat apps are able to recreate that mode of communication where you can get all the people shouted out at one time and individual people can respond back. And so you must have, it's a table stakes for doing business. And most of those folks include, as part of their solution, the ability to take conversation from a text-based conversation to a video conversation or a voice call. And so again, Teams, Zoom, Zoom is actually moving closer to Teams in launching itself into this space and creating some chat-like functions that persist outside of video calls. Again, Flock is a good one. And then, don't forget, there is a very specific market for the GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar. The GoTo family of products continues to exist. They have a different specialty than some of the others, whereas Flock is something you could buy and implement pretty quickly, pretty cheaply, low IT level. GoTo is often used in highly regulated. So if you need to have something protected by HIPAA or PCI or any other financial compliance regulations, you're going to want to look at GoTo as a way to ensure that compliance and to control access and delivery. So these are, I'm starting off soft and easy because some folks are still coming up to speed with implementing these in a safe and secure way for their whole organization. But I think that a graduate in college today will not walk into a business of any size or shape in the future without some sort of corporate standard for team messaging and video conferencing. So you want to be competitive and have that in your organization. And as I mentioned, you're going to have to say, here's how we use it. So it's still pretty new, and some tools will not be known to employees or will be something they're not sure how to use. And we do this a lot with things like Microsoft Teams, because it's not just instant messaging. There are channels and teams and file storage, etc. And so not everybody has the visualization of how it all stitches together and how they're supposed to use it. And quite frankly, one of our first training steps is, here's the stuff you used to email that you're now going to do in Microsoft Teams. So providing that translation of, we use this tool for this purpose, we use this tool for this purpose, wherever possible. Hopefully those are the same tool. And here's our expectations. So another component of this, and we work very closely with HR as the IT folks, another component is just to say, you can still accidentally insult someone through a chat, just like you would if you were standing at a water cooler. So having that same tone check and really explaining sort of what the cultural norms of your organization are is very important and very helpful, particularly when someone is a flexible worker and they don't come to your office. They are never, they don't even know you have a water cooler. So they can't pick up on the visual cues of how Fred's having a bad day, or Susie likes to be talked to in a soft voice, or whatever the individual nuances are of our teammates. And then I think that check-in, that absolute, I'm going to expect you to let me know you're here every day, or I'm going to expect you to check in with me for a quick stand-up meeting every Wednesday at 8, or I'm going to let you run on this project until you schedule a meeting with me saying you're ready to go over the progress report. Whatever your standard of check-in is, if you don't communicate it, it is going to lead to misset expectations, which could then lead to hurt feelings or worse. And then really ask yourself, why are we meeting? Why are we meeting? I think that we sometimes had in the last 12 to 15 months meetings that we needed just for human connection, just to talk to somebody besides our dog and our family. But now I really ask you to go back to, do we have an action item? Do we have agendas published? Could this be accomplished through one of those other tools, like a messaging system or a quick video call? And please be the meeting police within your organization, and don't let the technology dictate. And I bring this up because if you ever schedule a recurring meeting, that reminder is coming up until you cancel it and delete it, right? It's going to come up every week, whether you need a meeting or not. And the person on the other end of that is going to assume that you have a good purpose for it, and they'll be disappointed if you don't. So really and truly, make sure to run an effective meeting by only meeting when you need to. I think that this is probably the level 2, the escalation of the initial things that I just talked about. Those were the beginner level. This is the intermediate level. If you've ever spent, let's talk about like 2 years ago, if you ever spent time looking for something, files, even who is supposed to do a particular thing in your organization, and you ran around the building trying to figure that out, you know how difficult that was when most of the people you needed were under one roof. Now imagine someone who lives in another state, or someone who's in a different time zone, or someone who, as part of the onboarding process, never understood where files, digital or paper, reside in your organization. So spending an hour trying to find something every day, documentation, that answer from last week, the minutes of that meeting, that adds up. It adds up. It's that plaque that builds to dissatisfaction in an organization. So there's a couple ways to approach organizing your information across your team. So first starts with individual organization and you having a good understanding of the kinds of materials that are needed to do your job or the job of someone that you're supervising. But in addition to that, you have to actually implement some tools to organize not only the data, but also the project or the mission you're trying to accomplish together. I've started again with some of my favorites. I actually use Trello. Trello actually integrates with Microsoft Teams. And so Teams is kind of the platform we use for our employee engagement here. You can use, any Slack, you can use Teams. There are a number of different applications that can be sort of your base application. But Trello is a fun visualization of all the different things that you've got going on in projects in your world. Think of it like sticky notes that you might put on your wall to say, okay, this week I've got to do this, and this week I've got to do that. Next week I've got to do that. They're really flexible sticky notes that never get blown away, that never get eaten by the dog or marked on by the kids. They are things you can share with people, and that Trello is just one of the many in this category. A lot of our clients use Monday.com, which also integrates with Teams, Proof Hub, and then a oldie but a golden option is Basecamp. So Basecamp has been a really nice way when you're trying to bring together people who aren't necessarily on the same network. A lot of times the products I talk to you about really are designed or are easier to roll out when you're talking about people who all are employed by the same organization. But let's say you're talking about a board of directors or a volunteer set of volunteers, and everybody lives in a different world. Everybody has regular day jobs with their own corporate networks, but you don't control any of them. You can't dictate that we're all going to use Teams or we're all going to use Slack, etc. And so Basecamp is a great way to bring everybody together from those disparate Gmail, corporate accounts, other Microsoft places, etc., without being confusing and stepping on their other day job lives. So to be clear, I just gave you project management tools. Now, that's different than knowledge management, right? So project management is really the umbrella for a deliverable. Knowledge is the institutional, where things go, how things work, and some of the processes, maybe even the secret sauce of your organization. And so where do we keep that besides up here? And how do you onboard or offboard someone from that information, that knowledge, when they come into your organization, particularly if they can't shadow you? They're 200 miles away. So having a tool to allow you to build a corporate or a organization-wide knowledge management system. So think of this as Wikipedia for your group of people. How do I create that database? You use one of these tools. Now, on the low, kind of unsophisticated side, I see a lot of people using Google Drive, and that's fine. It is perfectly acceptable to use Google Drive. I will tell you that it should be very well protected because a lot of people can hack into Google Drive. Again, Teams is going to be pretty much on all these because it really incorporates this. But there are some other ones up here. Stand-Uply is a great solution you may not have heard of. GitHub is a great place, Kipwise, and Slab and Tetra. All of these are external cloud-based solutions to be able to allow people to triangulate. So you've got two employees and a place they meet in the middle, and that is that cloud solution for the knowledge management. What's beautiful about that is that you can add additional people to the mix without having to really move the knowledge management solution. And you can grant and take away access to that. So get yourself a great knowledge management in addition to a project management solution. And then now we start to get into like, how do I visualize all of this? How do I know what's where if I'm just talking about all these words that sound alike? So this is the part, and again, I'll tell you, it's not really easily done today for a small organization. Enterprises are doing this today using SharePoint. They're using artificial intelligence that actually reads the text of all the files and all the documents within their organization and automatically tags them and automatically categorizes them and recommends, using some of the recommendation engine technology you're familiar with at Amazon or any of the other shopping places that say people who bought this like this. Well, that same technology applies to people who searched for that document often wanted this file next. And so having some of that, again, I call it the robotic assist, but it's really based on machine learning and recommendation algorithms and basically artificial intelligence. That is the direction we're heading. So that's the masterclass. And I'll show you some of the exciting future of that. So we just took you from some of the beginner level, intermediate, and masterclass level solutions out there. I will tell you that when it comes to visualization, there's some, I don't know, easy wins, maybe the right way to say it. When you're trying to describe something for a remote employee, rather than saying, click on this and then click on that, or even taking control of their computer and doing it for them, which is sometimes how, unfortunately, we do it in technology world, you get kind of two birds with one stone if you actually take a screenshot of what you're trying to accomplish or a screen capture of a quick recording. And in most Windows 10 desktops, people have technology built in. If you've never used Snippet, I invite you to go to the Start menu and type in Snippet, and up comes a great way to do a beautiful screen capture or a portion of a screen capture, and annotate and write on that and send it around via email. There are many ways to visualize instructions, and it's particularly helpful with onboarding or with large complex tasks. Look for things like employee engagement tools like Blink, and then, as I mentioned, we've got some of the knowledge management tools that I think will help you with that collaborative part of building a high functioning virtual team. So now we're down to the part where they have everything they need to do their job. How do I trust but verify that they are in fact doing their job? And listen, employees want to do that as much as you want to know. There is a mutual satisfaction, there's a mutual dependency, and a good employee wants you to know and to give credit to them for getting the things that you said you wanted done. And a great supervisor wants to give credit and to recognize when someone has hit the milestones that were set out. And so there are some specific flexible or remote work status report tools that I can recommend. Status Hero has been around for a long time. I've actually been recommending this for several years now, way before COVID. And I think that I Done This is another up and comer in this space. And yes, that is the grammatically correct spelling of their product, even though it's not grammatically correct for writing. Check out those two as a way to have an interactive conversation with either one employee or teams of employees to figure out who is where on which project at what time. And again, some of this comes down to doing something that many people are not used to doing, and that is tracking their time. So those of us who sell services or who have billed in a time and materials basis, we've done this forever. So accountants and lawyers and IT professionals and all kinds of folks who bill by the hour, they're used to tracking every minute of their day. But for a remote employee, it might feel smothering. It might feel like micromanagement. And so to be able to position it as a expectation from the beginning doesn't give time for there to have any bad feelings. It's just the way we do things in this business. Set that expectation from the beginning when someone shifts to remote work, and use Clockify or Time Doctor, which makes it very simple. Another good one when you're trying to actually maybe bill against a grant or a project is to use something like Harvest, which allows you to really create reports and send quantifiable information off to third parties, as well as produce payroll information using the same data. So check out ways to make the accountability portion less about, I don't trust you, therefore you must do this extra step to justify that you're not goofing off at home. And more about, I can make better decisions when I know where your time is going throughout the day. And because you're not here every day, or because we're not in the same room, or because I'm not here every day, this is the tool we're going to use to capture that, to allow us both to analyze the information and do a better job together. I think that if you're setting expectations, particularly if your flex workers are also a shifted schedule from the normal business hours of the business, you're really going to want to set these expectations about accountability and decision making, because by definition, if this flexible worker is a 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. employee, but your organization is a 9 to 6 p.m. organization, there's at least 4 hours where nobody's talking to each other on either end of that equation. And so you really want to meet in the middle through a tool, avoid some hurt feelings. And then last but not least, I want to put in a plug for a culturally rich team. So this is so much more than diversity and equity, this is really the thing that stitches. It's the glue that holds an organization together, whether they're all in the same room or whether they're spread across the continent. I will tell you that it's that feeling, it's kind of an X factor, but it's that feeling you get like someone you never have met in person has been a soulmate and a friend forever. You can, as an employer, and you should, as an employee, expect to get close to that. And some tools can help with that. I've given you a couple of team building apps. I will tell you, it can also be some fun stuff. So at Next Trio, we run a weekly Family Feud game where we randomize the teams, and it's exactly what you might expect. We create a list of questions, and we have everybody survey on from Monday through Thursday. You get to submit your best answer to what you think the rest of us are going to answer. Not the right answer. This is not a trivia class. This is a, what do you think your colleagues, how well do you know your colleagues? And on Friday, we reveal the top 5 answers, and the winning team is always surprised and delighted and gets fun little gift certificates or just the pride of being the 10-week winner in a row. It's great, but those fun things really are things we can put icing on top of a cake of foundational team building activities related to the business as well. So we don't just apply fun and forget our day jobs. We must actually build accountability and trust within the teams. I personally think that some of the coolest hipster way to accomplish this, and not everybody will love it, as virtual reality and as augmented reality become again more of the norm over the next 5 to 10 years. These meeting spaces, virtual meeting spaces with avatars, can be a really easy way to introduce people into that kind of technology. When there's not a life on the line or a grant on the line or a donor on the line, it's when it's actually just meeting people and working better together. Some of these virtual reality technologies, in particular, we've used TeamFlow HQ, and it's very simple and really fun to set up, and do it in your organization once or twice and see if it works for you. I'm going to make this available through the YouTube video, but also if anyone wants to contact me, I'll give you some more policy information. Everything we've talked about today, you have to write it down. That's really the point of this slide. If you don't tell people what your version of remote work then or flexible work or shifted work hours are, if you don't define that, they're going to come with assumptions, and you know what happens when we assume. So write your policies down. I mentioned to you that I would briefly tell you that in the world of technology, we are heading into a category called the employee experience platform. It doesn't exist today, but it will in the future. It's just starting to come out of the ground. The seedling is just blooming. And so you will see some of those components that I talked about being part of a great employee engaged experience being really organized into one solution, so you don't have to patchwork these together. And first to market on that is Microsoft Viva. Again, literally 3 out of 4 of these components of Viva, which by the way is based entirely on Microsoft Teams, 3 out of the 4 are not released yet. So I'm not pushing this product at all. I'm just giving you a sense of how new this entire holistic category is. So keep an eye on that space and see where Microsoft takes Microsoft Viva. Other vendors will follow, but really and truly the end goal when we're giving this presentation in 2 or 3 years is that one solution will have more of these components stitched together so that you don't have to figure it out and integrate it yourself. And with that, I know I gave you 8 minutes for questions. How about that, Cynthia? Is that a...
That works. Does anyone have any questions for Christy? Again, you can I think, I don't know where it is, but you can raise your hand. Let me open the participants. Either raise your hand or throw in the question into the chat.
And if you don't have your question burning on the tip of your tongue, I'm absolutely happy. And that's why I've got my contact information. A lot of times folks need to digest this. This is one thing where I wish Cynthia and Jennifer that we were able to do these webinars in person, because then I could give cocktails and it would just all sink in a little easier. Sometimes technology gets folks, spun up and without resolution. And
Right.
so that's why I always allow just contact me if you have additional questions after you've ruminated and marinated on it a little bit.
Last call for questions. We can't see you, so placing the questions in the chat is important. Or if you raise a hand, I believe Cynthia might be able to see your hand raised.
That must mean I explained it all so well.
You did. I want to thank Christy for joining us today, and thank all of you for being on the call as well. Join us 2 weeks from now when Dr. Moira Forsyth is going to be with us to talk about a leadership topic. Cynthia, do you have that off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head, but I do have it. Okay, so the topic of her presentation will be cultivating resilience in times of change and challenge, personally, professionally, and organizationally.
It's going to be a great one, and I'm really excited that she's going to be with us. So I hope you'll all tune in for that presentation as well, and take Christy up on her offer to reach out to her directly with any questions you have. I have worked with the Next Trio with a few clients, and they're really a top-notch team that knows what they're doing and is available to, and responsive to you. So I would take her up on that offer. So thank you so much. If there's nothing else, have a wonderful day, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, thanks.